G'day folks, just waiting till the stream gets going. It's Chris Nitto, by the way, for those who don't know. It's been a while since we've done one of these live streams, and it's our 14th year that we've been in operation, either as Aussie Cyclone Chasers or as Weather WIQ. And one of the things we used to do 14 years ago is we used to get on here fairly frequently and do live streams with our community. The community was much smaller back then, of course, and it was always fun. But the idea is that we probably want to start that again and just engage with you a little bit more. Over the last 10 years, one thing that we've noticed as Weather IQ and previously as Aussie Cyclone Chasers is really one of the main issues has been the over-sensationalisation of weather. Obviously, there's been some major advancements in graphics and weather modelling, and that allows a lot of, let's say, hype type graphics to come out with arrows pointing to all sorts of cities whenever you want them to point to what sort of cities. You can always find a computer model that wants to back whatever you want to try and say. And what we're trying to do here with these live streams is just alert people to the more likely solutions. Right, so what we're going to start with is looking at this low pressure system here, Tropical Cyclone Bakang. But Tropical Cyclone Bakang is about 2,500 kilometres away from the coastline. Now, you might be wondering, well, Nitso, why are we even talking about this if it's so far away? Well, the reason is that what we're expecting this cyclone to do is track in an easterly direction. And what we're also expecting a little closer to home to do is track in a westerly direction. And what we're going to see at some stage over the next little while is going to be a situation where this system tracks east, this system tracks west, and we don't know how that interaction is going to play out. So the idea here is going to be that interaction may actually accelerate one of these vortices closer to the coastline longer term. So we really don't know how that's going to play out, and that's why it's important that we, even though this one's over 1,000 kilometres away, this one's 2,500 kilometres away, we still need to monitor that interaction over the course of the next 7 to 10 days. And I'll give you an example of why that's the case when we take a look here at some of the modelling for this particular system. So let's try that again. All right. All right, so we've got our two systems over here, this one and this one. And what we're expecting to see here is a situation where the one in the east moves west and the one in the west moves east. So see how they move a little closer together. Now, as they move closer together, there's going to be an interaction here between the two rotational systems. This one has a reasonable chance of becoming a tropical cyclone. This one's already a tropical cyclone, but will likely start weakening. So what we're interested in here is going to be the potential for a rotational area to then potentially either accelerate west or accelerate east, depending on the type of interaction that might take place here. And what we can see there is in the longer range forecast, we actually have a few opportunities for the system to push into WA. So it's not something that we expect to see happen, but it isn't something we can 100% definitively rule out. So we need to monitor that potential for that interaction between our two rotational systems longer term. In the meantime, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. So in the next 7 to 10 days, it looks fantastic. So there's no problem there for the WA coastline. It's beyond this time frame that things get a little bit hazy. On top of that, we're potentially going to see another little rotational area developing somewhere around the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf that we'll need to keep an eye on along the monsoon. And we'll talk about the monsoon shortly. So there's a couple of things there that are going on through these Western Australian waters. None of those things are impacting population centres, and none of them are likely to impact population centres. We're just monitoring the situation out here in the Southeast Indian Ocean around Christmas Island, where these two rotational areas might meet in a week's time. Alrighty, so that's that one. let's move over to this one. This one's obviously the one that's going to be the main talking point. And we've seen a lot of misinformation about this one driving heavy rainfall all through Queensland and into some parts of New South Wales, all through the Northern Territory, all through WA. We've seen all sorts of things. So let's clear up a few things that are going on with this particular system up north. So with this one here, it's a very weak low. It's located north of the top end. All right, so north of the top end, and it's not moving very fast in any particular direction. What we're anticipating with this particular system is that it's going to stay fairly slow moving. If anything, it might drift eastwards towards Papua. Now, as we continue on into the end of the week, towards the end of the week, the system's going to adopt a southward track. And as it pushes southwards, what it does is it brings down some very deep tropical moisture in behind it on the northern side and ahead of it on the eastern side. So what happens here as we move towards the weekend is we see an increase in rainfall initially around the Gulf coastline, and then we'll see a further increase in rainfall over the top end once this moves southwards. And then what we're interested in is what does it do after it comes onto the coast, whether it be in the Western Gulf, the Southern Gulf, or the Southeastern Gulf. What is it going to do after that point? And there's a lot of potential for this system to move down through Western Queensland. There's some potential for the system to move across Northern Queensland. There's some potential for the system to die off in the Northern Territory. So what we're seeing there is a number of different solutions longer term that lead us to not really understand the outcome and impacts of this system in the long term. So it's pretty pointless when we go to charts, and this is one of those reasons why we want to take out some of the misinformation, right? It's pretty pointless if we're going to start showing you 2-week rain charts and the rain charts start looking like, let me give you an example. Alrighty, so this is a 2-week rain chart, and you look at that and you look at the scary graphic and you go, holy dooly, the whole of Northern Australia is going to flood. All right, but we don't know that. We can't be certain on that, right? Because we don't know what this low is going to do. We understand that there's a fairly significant moisture flow in behind it, so we're looking at some good rain around the top end. We're potentially seeing another circulation, albeit very weak one, developing around the North Kimberley. So there's some good rainfall up there for the Kimberley. Then for Queensland, the difficulty here is going to be, well, how far does all this moisture move? Now, I've seen some mapping that shows all these blue shaded areas all the way down to Brisbane. That may not be the case, and in fact, that's probably an unlikely solution at the moment. The more likely solution is that we're going to see a lot of our heavier rainfall stay in the northern areas. All right, we're not seeing much of that really heavy rain, not seeing much evidence of that really heavy rain pushing southwards. But the point of the matter is, I can find a computer model to tell you either way, right? So it's important to understand what we don't know yet. All right, and what we don't know yet is what this system's going to do as it pushes south through the Gulf. Is it going to just hang about through the base of the top end? Is it going to then start pushing southeast through North Queensland and drive flooding rain in through this area? We just don't know. And so, as I said, be very, very cautious when you're seeing mapping that takes you 2 weeks out on something that's so difficult to forecast beyond the next 5 to 7 days. So more accurately, this gives you an idea of what we do know. All right, so if I showed you this map, this is something we're pretty confident in. All right, we're confident that the Gulf of Carpentaria is going to see good rainfall in the next 7 days. We're confident that rainfall will increase around the northern parts of Cape York Peninsula. We're confident that northeast Queensland is going to see a surface trough coming in from the Coral Sea, which has absolutely nothing at all to do with anything that we've talked about so far. That's a separate system, and it's on its own, and it's driving some heavy rainfall from about Rolling Stone northwards midweek. That's a completely separate system to the general wet season system that we're going to see come down. All right, so that's what we're confident on. That's all we're confident on. The rest of it and all the pretty graphics that you're going to see beyond this is all a bunch of computer model gobbledygook that we may see, we may not see. There's not a hell of a lot of evidence either way for any one of these, all right, as to exactly what happens and how far we penetrate that rainfall southwards. So I don't want folks down in Brisbane thinking they're about to get 200-300 mils out of what's going on up north. I don't want folks in Mackay thinking they're about to get 300 mils of what's going on up north. And I don't want folks in Townsville thinking they're going to get the same, all right? Because we don't know. Longer term, we just don't know what this is going to do. It has just as much chance of just sitting in the base of the top end and driving some heavy rain into the top end, and that's it, and into the Gulf, and that's it, all right? But we also see some evidence that there's troughing in the second week that might drive some of that moisture across Queensland longer term. We just don't know. So take very, very large caution whenever someone starts to show you in this type of setup a map that's 2 weeks out and shows all these pretty colours. Yep, absolutely. Shows pretty colours, and it's great for attention grabbing, and it's fantastic for social media sharing. And as I say, it's one of those things that people don't think about and stop and think twice and go, well, hang on, that's 2 weeks out. That's a long time for things to change. And I've just shown you, for over the next 5 to 7 days, look at how much disagreement we have in the guidance. Look at all these dots. Look at where they are. All right, and that's only 5-6 days away at the moment. And that's how far away we are with regards to what could and could not happen. Okay, so yes, we can tell you generally we expect to see this cyclone or this low tracking southwards through the western half of the Gulf, and then we see all sorts of solutions beyond that point. All right, so that's a really important part of the forecast over the next 10 to 14 days. Why is this so important? Well, because of this low, this induces a monsoon flow. There's not much of a monsoon at the moment coming across, so this low is going to be the key factor in developing the wet season over northern Australia. All right, so without this low, we're going to really struggle to develop a monsoon this year. So with this low, with the assistance of this low, we're able to bring down that tropical moisture and we're able to kickstart our monsoon. So if we take a look here at the this one's a really good website, as you know, the Windy site. Unfortunately, it's often the site that's shared the most, and it's often the site that has the most wow graphics, right? And the wow graphics with all the big arrows pointing to all sorts of rubbish. Understand, though, that we're facing the same limitations here with the modelling that's being shown here. So the idea is that this low, there it is there, just sort of mucking around up there in the Arafura Sea, and then eventually it starts to drift southwards. Now, as it starts to drift southwards, you can see heavy rainfall beginning to shift south with it. And then in behind it is what I'm interested in, because in behind the low is when this opens up our monsoonal channel here. So all this northwesterly cross-equatorial flow, if we zoom right out, we can see that air mass is coming from the south, from southern Asia across the equator, and we can see it coming into northern Australia. And that's what kickstarts our wet season. But you can see all the way through till next Saturday, Sunday, there's not a hell of a lot of a kickstart to the wet season in Queensland. It's mostly the Gulf country and the Northern Territory. There is a little bit of rain over the northeastern parts of Queensland, and that's associated with a completely separate system, as I mentioned. All right, so this is our low. This is what kickstarts our monsoon, supposedly. It's not a guarantee, but supposedly what kickstarts our monsoon as we lead into Christmas. Now, how far that monsoon will shift southwards, how far that rain and moisture advection will shift southwards, we simply don't know, and we're simply having a bit of a guess. And so we need to wait until we've got more definitive proof about what's going to happen here. Alrighty, so I just wanted to draw that to your attention. Obviously, I've mentioned it a couple of times. The only other thing that we need to watch here is going to be northeast Queensland. Through the week, this week, there's a bit of a southeasterly that comes in. And as that southeasterly comes in, we get this area of shower activity on the leading edge of the southeaster. That starts, let me just fast forward from Tuesday. There it is, from Tuesday night into Wednesday. We see those moderate to heavy falls of rain developing in the northeast coast. Absolutely, can I just restate this? Nothing at all to do with the low pressure system, nothing at all to do with the monsoon. This is simply a southeasterly flow, and it's simply the idea of a little trough that's in the southeasterly flow interacting with our mountain ranges. But that can provide falls in the 1 to 200 millimetres on that northeast coast of Queensland over a short space of time. All right, so that's where we are at the moment with the tropics, folks. That's all we've got for you at the moment. When things get clearer, we'll let you know, but just don't trust any weather graphics that take you longer than about 7 days out at the moment. If you trust any weather graphics that take you longer than 7 days and they're wrong, you've only got yourselves to blame. Alrighty, if you've got any questions, I'm just having a look here at the chat, seeing if we've got any questions. If not, I'll wrap it up. No, I'm not getting any. All right, sweet. I think that's it. Okay, so hopefully I've answered what we're expecting over the next 5 to 7 days. So moderate to heavy falls here Wednesday, possibly Thursday. We've got the low/cyclone dragging itself southwards over the course of the week into the weekend. And then obviously we don't know what it's going to do after the weekend. We've got potential for a very weak circulation around the North Kimberley, although that's expected to remain very weak. And over in the west, we're watching to see how our little low here will interact with our cyclone here in about a week's time. All right, so that's where we are at the tropics. We'll have another chat soon. Have a good day.